The lucky hand. The neon lights of Station Zenith's gambling district painted the recycled air in shades of purple and gold. Marcus Harrison studied his reflection in the polished surface of the casino's entrance, adjusting the collar of his worn flight jacket. 6 years of hauling cargo through the outer rim hadn't been kind to either the jacket or its owner, but tonight he needed every scrap of confidence he could muster. The Stellar Spire Casino rose before him like a tower of dreams and broken fortunes, its crystalline architecture defying gravity in ways that still made his pilot's instincts twitch. He needed 15,000 credits for repairs to his ship's quantum drive, or the Starweaver would be stuck in dock until the station's salvage crews claimed her for unpaid fees. "Papers," growled the Drachnid bouncer, its scaled hide shifting colors in the neon light. Marcus presented his identification chip, keeping his face neutral as the creature's compound eyes studied the holographic display. After a moment that felt like eternity, the bouncer stepped aside. The interior of the Stellar Spire was a cathedral dedicated to chance. Holographic games of probability floated in three-dimensional space, while more traditional tables hosted games from 100 worlds. Marcus ignored the flashier attractions, making his way to a corner where serious players gathered around tables of real wood, an extravagance that screamed old money. He spotted his target immediately. Casthor, the notorious crime lord of the Orion Arm, held court at a private table. The Zentaurian's iridescent scales caught the light as he dealt cards with 4 of his 6 hands, the remaining 2 occupied with an expensive-looking drink and a smoking device that released shapes into the air. Marcus took a deep breath, remembering his military training. The plan was simple: work his way up through smaller games, attract attention, then parlay that into a seat at Casthor's table. The crime lord was known for his love of high-stakes games against skilled opponents. More importantly, he was known for accepting unusual forms of currency, like ship repairs, as stakes. 3 hours later, Marcus had turned his initial stake of 500 credits into 8,000. He'd kept his winning streak modest enough to avoid suspicion, but impressive enough to draw attention. As he collected his winnings from another successful hand, he felt a presence behind him. "The boss would like to extend an invitation," rumbled a voice that seemed to originate somewhere near the ceiling. Marcus turned to find one of Casthor's enforcers, a massive graviton whose species consisted mainly of controlled dark matter. "I'd be honored," Marcus replied, gathering his chips with steady hands that betrayed none of his inner tension. Casthor's private table sat on a raised platform, offering a view of the entire casino floor. The crime lord's compound eyes studied Marcus as he approached, all 6 hands continuing their various activities without pause. "Harrison, yes." Casthor's translator rendered his clicks and whistles into smooth basic. "We've been watching your play. Quite impressive for a simple cargo hauler." Marcus took the offered seat, noting the subtle security measures surrounding the table. Sometimes luck favors the simple. Indeed, Casthor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Though in my experience, luck rarely travels alone. She often brings skill and strategy as companions." He gestured to the deck. "Shall we see which companions your luck brings tonight?" The game was Cosmic Fall, a complex variant of poker that incorporated elements of quantum probability. Marcus had learned it during long hauls between the outer colonies, often playing against his ship's AI for practice. The stakes started high and quickly climbed higher. As the hands progressed, Marcus maintained his facade of the lucky amateur while carefully counting cards and calculating probabilities. He won some hands, lost others, keeping his overall gains modest enough to avoid suspicion. But as the night wore on, he felt Casthor's gaze intensifying. The crime lord's scales had shifted to deeper hues of blue and green, colors that Marcus had learned indicated either pleasure or anticipation among Zentaurians. The pot had grown to include not only credits but markers for various goods and services, including the ship repairs Marcus desperately needed. Then came the hand that changed everything. "Perhaps," Casthor said, laying down his cards with 4 hands while his remaining 2 drummed a complex rhythm on the table. "We should make this more interesting." He gestured to one of his attendants, who stepped forward carrying an ornate container. The container opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere, revealing what appeared to be a crystalline statue of a humanoid female. But as Marcus watched, the crystal seemed to pulse with internal light, and he realized with a start that she was alive. "My most valuable possession," Casthor announced. "A genuine member of the crystalline collective. The last of her kind, or so I'm told." His mandibles clicked rapidly. "Against everything you have, including your ship." Marcus felt his breath catch. The crystalline collective was supposed to be extinct, wiped out in the quantum wars a century ago. If this being was genuine. But no, the stakes were too high. He had to focus on his original goal. "I only need the ship repairs," he said carefully. "Come now." Casthor's scales rippled with colors Marcus couldn't interpret. "Where's that famous human curiosity? That drive to reach for the impossible?" Besides, his translator created a sound like a chuckle. "You've been counting cards all night. Surely you've calculated the odds." Marcus froze. Before he could respond, Casthor continued, "Oh, don't worry. I appreciate skill. It's why I invited you to play. But now it's time to show your true capabilities. All or nothing, Mr. Harrison. Do you accept?" The crystalline being's light pulsed once, and Marcus could have sworn he felt something. A touch of consciousness against his own, a whisper of desperation. Whether it was real or imagination, he found himself nodding. "Deal the cards." Flight through the stars. The cards gleamed under the casino's artificial lights as they landed on the table. Marcus kept his breathing steady as he lifted the edges of his cards, but his mind was racing. He'd pushed his luck too far, and now everything, his ship, his freedom, and possibly his life, rested on this final hand. Casthor's multiple hands moved in mesmerizing patterns as he arranged his own cards. The crystalline being in the container pulsed with increasing frequency, her light casting prismatic patterns across the table's polished surface. Marcus studied his cards. A quantum sequence, one of the rarest hands in cosmic fall. The odds of drawing it naturally were astronomical. Either this was the luckiest moment of his life, or "Show," Casthor commanded, laying down his cards with a flourish. A stellar flush, nearly unbeatable in normal circumstances. Nearly. Marcus revealed his cards, slowly, one at a time. The table fell silent as the final card touched the table. Casthor's scales shifted to a deep purple, a color Marcus had never seen on a Centaurian before. "Impossible," the crime lord whispered. "Improbable," Marcus corrected, reaching for the container holding his winnings. "But then, that's the nature of quantum probability, isn't it?" The crystalline being's light pulsed rapidly as his fingers touched the container. This time, he definitely felt it. A consciousness reaching out to his own, conveying urgent thoughts without words. Danger. Deception. Run. Marcus barely had time to process the warning before Casthor's scales flared brilliant red. "Security protocols." The crime lord roared. "Lock down all exits." The casino erupted into chaos. Patrons scattered as security drones descended from concealed panels in the ceiling. Marcus grabbed the container and vaulted over the table, years of military training taking over. He felt rather than saw the stun blast that passed through the space where his head had been moments before. Left. Service corridor. 20 meters. The thoughts weren't his own, but they came with crystal clarity. Marcus didn't question them, diving through the indicated doorway just as another volley of stun blasts scorched the wall behind him. The service corridor was narrow and poorly lit, designed for maintenance drones rather than humans. Marcus ran hunched over, the container clutched against his chest. The crystalline being's light provided just enough illumination to avoid obstacles. Access panel. Right wall. Override code. Quantum 7 crystal 9. You can interface with the station's systems. Marcus gasped as he input the code. The panel slid open, revealing a maintenance shaft. Yes. Limited range. Hurry. They emerged 2 levels down, in a cargo processing area. Marcus could hear security alerts echoing through the station's communication system. His ship was docked 3 sections away. They'd never make it through normal channels. Alternative route possible, but dangerous. More dangerous than staying here. Marcus asked as heavy footsteps echoed from a connecting corridor. External maintenance track. Magnetic boots required. Marcus grinned despite the situation. His worn flight jacket might not look like much, but the boots were military grade, designed for emergency repairs in 0G. Show me. They found the airlock where the maintenance track began. As Marcus sealed his jacket and checked his boots' power levels, he finally had a moment to properly look at his unlikely companion. The crystalline being's form was more clearly visible now, definitely feminine, but with an alien grace that reminded him of ice sculptures. Her surface caught and refracted light in complex patterns that seemed to convey emotions. Right now, they spoke of urgency and concern. "I'm Marcus," he said as he initiated the airlock sequence. "Lyra," came the response in his mind. Last archivist of the Crystalline Collective. The airlock cycled open to reveal the maintenance track, a narrow pathway along the station's outer hull. Below them, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly, while above, the station's massive bulk curved away into darkness. "They're accessing external security systems," Lyra warned. "Estimate 3 minutes until automated defenses activate." Marcus activated his magnetic boots and stepped out onto the track. "Then we better make this quick. Can you interface with my ship from here?" "Distance too great. Need closer proximity." They made their way along the track as quickly as safety allowed. Marcus tried not to think about the drop beneath them, focusing instead on each step. The station's rotation meant they were technically walking upside down relative to its internal gravity, which made the experience even more disorienting. A warning shot from a security drone lit up the space near them, its energy dispersing harmlessly into the vacuum. More coming. Multiple vectors. Marcus quickened his pace. They were almost to the section where the Starweaver was docked. "Once we're inside, can you help with launch protocols?" "Yes, but complications expected." "When are there not?" Marcus muttered as they reached another airlock. This one led directly to the docking bay where his ship waited. As the airlock cycled, he could hear the clang of magnetic boots on the maintenance track behind them. Security forces in pursuit. The Starweaver wasn't much to look at, an older model Horizon-class freighter with more patch jobs than original hull plates. But she was home, and more importantly, she was fast when she needed to be. They sprinted across the docking bay floor. Marcus placed Lyra's container carefully in the co-pilot's seat before throwing himself into the pilot's chair. "Ready to show me what you can do?" Lyra's crystalline form pulsed with bright energy. The ship's systems came alive faster than Marcus had ever seen, displays flickering with information at impossible speeds. Navigation plotted. Engine optimization complete. Warning. Station defense grid activating. Of course it is. Marcus's hands flew over the controls, muscle memory taking over. Let's show them what happens when crystal meets quantum drive. The Starweaver's engines roared to life just as the docking bay doors began to close. They shot through the narrowing gap with inches to spare, leaving the station's artificial gravity behind for the pure freedom of space. But their problems were far from over. Multiple contacts appeared on the radar. Casthor's private security force, ships designed for pursuit and capture. And behind them, emerging from the station like a swarm of angry insects, came the defense drones. "They're targeting our quantum drive," Lyra observed, "attempting to prevent long-range escape. Then we'll have to get creative." Marcus began an evasive pattern he'd learned during the border wars. "Can you do anything about those targeting systems?" Lyra's light brightened, initiating quantum interference. "But Marcus, there's something you need to know about why Casthor wanted me." about what's coming. Let me guess, Marcus said as he rolled the ship to avoid incoming fire. It's complicated. Very. The fate of your world may depend on it. Marcus allowed himself a brief laugh. Well, at least we won't be bored. Speaking of which, he nodded toward the pursuing ships. Shall we show them what a cargo hauler can really do? Lyra's response came with a pulse of what felt like approval. Indeed. I suggest we start with the quantum wake destabilizer you've been hiding under that false cargo manifest. Now it was Marcus's turn to be surprised. How did you? I told you. I'm an archivist. Now, about that maneuver. The Starweaver dove into the debris field surrounding Station Zenith, pursued by some of the best pilots in the sector. But none of them had ever seen the combination of human ingenuity and crystalline technology that was about to be unleashed. The real question was, would it be enough to win their freedom, or had Marcus's lucky streak finally run out? Hidden truths. The mining colony of New Titan clung to its asteroid like a barnacle to a whale's back. Marcus guided the Starweaver through the maze of mining equipment and service stations, grateful for the cover they provided from any pursuing vessels. They'd spent 3 days executing random quantum jumps to shake off Casthor's forces, but he wasn't ready to believe they were safe. "You're sure about this place?" he asked, glancing at Lyra. Her crystalline form had been steadily brightening since they'd escaped Station Zenith, and now she glowed with a soft, steady light that made the cockpit feel almost peaceful. "The colony's quantum signature masks other energy readings," she replied, "and the mineral deposits in the asteroid belt interfere with long-range scanners. Will be difficult to track here." The Starweaver settled into a docking cradle at the far end of the colony. Marcus had chosen one of the maintenance bays rather than the main docking area. More expensive, but far more private. As the docking clamps engaged, he finally allowed himself to relax slightly. "All right," he said, turning to face Lyra fully. "I think it's time you told me what's really going on. Why was Casthor keeping you? What's this threat to Earth you mentioned?" Lyra's surface rippled with patterns that Marcus was beginning to recognize as expressions of concern. "It's complicated. My people, the Crystalline Collective, we weren't just a civilization. We were living repositories of knowledge, each of us containing vast archives of information from across the galaxy. I thought the Collective was wiped out in the quantum wars," Marcus said. "Nearly. I am the last." Her light dimmed momentarily. "But that's not important right now. What matters is what I discovered in Casthor's database while I was his prisoner. There's another war coming, Marcus. One that could make the quantum wars look like a border skirmish." Before she could continue, a proximity alert flashed on the console. Someone was approaching the maintenance bay. Marcus tensed, but Lyra's light pulsed reassuringly. "Local security patrol. Standard procedure." But her light flickered in what Marcus had come to recognize as amusement. They seemed to be having unexpected equipment problems. The security patrol passed by without stopping, their scanners mysteriously malfunctioning in the vicinity of the Starweaver. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Handy trick. Simple quantum interference. Now, about the coming threat. A sharp knock on the hull interrupted them. Marcus drew his pulse pistol, moving silently to the airlock's view screen. Outside stood a single figure in a mining engineer's suit, hood pulled low over their face. No hostile intent detected, Lyra projected, but interesting quantum signatures. Marcus kept his pistol ready as he cycled the airlock. The figure stepped inside, removing their hood to reveal a woman with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that seemed to shift color in the light. "Captain Harrison," she said, her voice carrying a subtle accent Marcus couldn't place. "And the last archivist. I've been waiting for you." Marcus's grip tightened on his weapon. "You have us at a disadvantage." The woman smiled. "My name is Rena Voss. I was once part of the research team that first contacted the Crystalline Collective." She looked at Lyra with something like reverence. "We thought you were all gone." "She speaks truth," Lyra confirmed. "I remember her quantum signature from the first contact archives." "How did you find us?" Marcus demanded, not lowering his weapon. I've maintained monitoring programs throughout this sector ever since the collective fell, Rena explained. When I detected crystalline quantum patterns matching archive signatures, I knew I had to investigate. She paused, her color-shifting eyes growing serious, especially given what's coming. You know, Lyra's light pulsed with surprise. I've seen the signs, Rena nodded. The quantum disturbances in the outer rim, the unexplained disappearances of research outposts, the sudden interest of certain parties in ancient collective technology. She met Marcus's gaze. The veil is thinning. The veil. Marcus looked between them. Lyra's light dimmed to almost nothing. The quantum barrier between dimensions, what your scientists call space-time. The collective discovered long ago that it wasn't as solid as most species believed, and we weren't the only ones to make that discovery. There are things out there, Rena continued, in the spaces between spaces. The collective called them the Void Hunters. They've been trying to break through for millennia. And now they've found a way, Lyra finished. That's what I discovered in Casthor's data. He's not just a crime lord. He's part of a cult that worships the Void Hunters. They're actively working to weaken the veil. Marcus holstered his weapon, running a hand through his hair. And Earth. How does my world fit into this? Earth sits at a quantum nexus point, Rena explained. If the veil fails there, it fails everywhere, Lyra projected. That's why Casthor wanted me. The archives I carry contain information about how to strengthen the veil. The collective used to maintain it, before the wars. And now you're the only one left who knows how, Marcus concluded. He leaned against the bulkhead, trying to process the scale of what they were discussing. So what's the plan? We need to get to Earth, Rena said. But it won't be easy. Casthor's cult has infiltrated multiple governments, including elements of Earth's defense forces, and they're not the only ones who'd be interested in the last crystalline archivist. As if to emphasize her point, the Starweaver's proximity sensors began blaring again. This time, the readings were far more serious. Multiple ships dropping out of quantum space around the asteroid. Mining Guild transponder codes, Lyra reported. But the quantum signatures are wrong. These are military vessels in disguise. How did they find us so quickly? Marcus was already moving to the pilot's seat. Quantum trace particles, Rena explained, strapping herself into a jump seat. Your ship's drive is leaking them. Standard for cargo haulers, but it makes you easy to track if someone knows what to look for. Wonderful. Marcus's hands flew over the controls. Any other good news? The incoming vessels are deploying quantum dampening fields, Lyra projected. They're trying to prevent us from jumping to quantum space. Standard containment procedure, Rena commented. They want to take us alive. Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. Well, that's their first mistake. He turned to Lyra. Remember that quantum wake destabilizer we used to escape Station Zenith. Think you can modify it to disrupt their dampening fields? Lyra's light brightened with understanding. Yes, but it will require significant power. We'll have to divert energy from life support. How long can we survive without it? Approximately 6 minutes. How long to modify and activate the destabilizer? 5 minutes, 40 seconds. Marcus grinned. 20 seconds to spare. I love a comfortable margin. He looked at Rena. I don't suppose you'd prefer to stay here. The scientist smiled back, her eyes shifting to a steely gray, and missed the chance to work with the last crystalline archivist. Not a chance. Your funeral. Marcus engaged the Starweaver's engines, though let's try to avoid that outcome. Lyra, ready to show these military types what happens when you combine human ingenuity, crystalline technology, and really terrible odds. Lyra's response came with a pulse of what felt like excitement. I assume we're about to do something incredibly dangerous and mathematically ill-advised. Obviously. Good. I'm beginning to understand why the collective found humans so fascinating. The Starweaver lifted from its docking cradle as the first shots from the disguised military vessels lit up the space around them. Marcus threw the ship into a spin that would have been suicidal without the modified inertial dampeners, plotting a course through the asteroid field that would make any sane pilot reconsider their career choices. They had 6 minutes to pull off the impossible. But then, Marcus thought as Lyra's light pulsed in harmony with the ship's systems, impossible was starting to feel like their specialty. The coming storm. Earth loomed in the Starweaver's view screen, a blue marble wrapped in the sprawling infrastructure of humanity's first and greatest space endeavor. Marcus had forgotten how beautiful it looked from orbit, though the orbital defense platforms and patrol ships somewhat marred the view. "Running final identity check," he announced, fingers dancing across the controls. The forged credentials Rena had provided were good. They had to be, considering what they'd paid for them. But one wrong digit would bring the entire Earth defense fleet down on their heads. "Defense grid scanning," Lyra reported from her position in the co-pilot's seat. Her crystalline form had taken on a subtle blue tinge, reflecting the planet below. "Quantum signatures masked as requested." Rena leaned forward from her station, her color-shifting eyes focused on the approaching orbital platforms. "Remember, we only need to convince them long enough to get clearance for the Sydney landing zone. Once we're in the atmosphere, their scanning coverage has too many gaps to track us effectively." The seconds stretched like hours as they waited for the defense grid's response. Finally, a green light flashed on the console. "Authorization granted for approach vector 793, announced an automated voice. "Welcome back to Earth, Research Vessel Horizon." Marcus released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. That's the easy part done. "Movement detected," Lyra projected suddenly. 3 vessels on intercept course. Quantum signatures match Casthor's fleet. "How the hell did they get past Earth's defense grid?" Rena demanded, pulling up tactical displays. "They're using the same masking technology we are," Lyra observed. "But their credentials appear to be genuine." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Looks like you were right about their government infiltration." "The United Earth Defense Council meets in 2 hours, Rena reminded them. "It's our only chance to present the evidence and warn them about the veil." "Then we better not be late." Marcus pushed the Starweaver's engines, beginning their descent. The pursuing ships immediately changed course to follow. "They're charging weapons," Lyra reported, "but they can't fire without revealing themselves to Earth's defense systems." "Small favors," Marcus muttered. "How long can you maintain our masking?" Lyra's light pulsed with concentration. "Through atmospheric entry. After that, the quantum interference will become too unstable." "That's fine," Rena said, studying their trajectory. "Once we're in the atmosphere, we can lose them in the Torres Strait shipping lanes." The magnetic interference from the mineral freighters shoaled. She never finished the sentence. A new ship dropped out of quantum space directly ahead of them, a massive dreadnought bearing the insignia of Earth's Special Operations Division. "This is Commander James Valencia of the EDS Vigilant," a stern voice announced over their comm. "Research Vessel Horizon, you are ordered to power down and prepare for boarding." This is not a request. Marcus's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. "James Valencia died in the border wars," he said quietly. "I was there." "Quantum signature analysis complete," Lyra projected. "The entity commanding that vessel is not human. Void hunter probability, 87.9%. "They're already here," Rena whispered, her eyes shifting to a pale, frightened gray. "We're too late." "No," Marcus said firmly, his hand steady on the controls. "We're right on time. They wouldn't be trying to stop us if we couldn't still make a difference." He glanced at Lyra. "Options." Her light pulsed rapidly as she processed possibilities. "The Dreadnought's quantum signature is unstable. They're struggling to maintain their presence in our dimension. A properly calibrated quantum shock could disrupt their manifestation." "And how do we properly calibrate a quantum shock?" "We'd need a massive energy surge precisely targeted. The only system on board with enough power would be..." The quantum drive, Marcus finished, which would strand us here. We'd never reach the Defense Council in time without it, Rena pointed out. Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. Who said anything about reaching them? Lyra, can you broadcast? The quantum interference would carry any transmission across all emergency frequencies. But Marcus, if we detonate the drive, the explosion will. Will the Defense Council get the message? Yes, but. And will they understand what's coming? The quantum burst would carry all my archived data about the Void Hunters and the Veil. But Marcus, the Starweaver won't survive. We won't survive. He reached out, placing his hand against her crystalline surface. The connection between them had grown stronger over their time together, and now he could feel her concern, her fear, not of death, but of failing in their mission. Sometimes, he said softly, you have to lose everything to win the game. He looked at Rena. Emergency pods are in the rear compartment. Get to one. Now. The scientist hesitated only a moment before nodding. It's been an honor, she said, and disappeared through the rear hatch. You should go with her, Lyra projected. Not a chance. Marcus began the quantum drive overload sequence. I don't abandon my co-pilot. Marcus, her light pulsed with emotion. These past days with you have been. I never knew humans could be like this, could make me feel like this. Save it for when we're atoms scattered across the quantum foam, he said with a wink, ready to show the Void Hunters why they should have stayed in their dimension. Her response came with a pulse of fierce joy. Ready. The space around them lit up with weapons fire as Kazthor's ships and the false dreadnought realized what they were attempting. But they were too late. The Starweaver's quantum drive reached critical mass, and Lyra channeled its energy into a single, perfect burst of information-laden destruction. Marcus thought he heard her laugh in his mind as the quantum shockwave erupted around them. It was a beautiful sound. The explosion lit up Earth's sky like a new star being born. Every quantum-capable device on the planet received the transmission simultaneously. The truth about the Void Hunters, the weakening veil, and the last message of the crystalline collective. But in the moment before the quantum shock wave claimed them, something unexpected happened. Lyra's crystalline form began to glow with an impossible brightness, and Marcus felt their consciousness merging in ways that transcended physical form. The quantum foam, her thoughts came to him. It's not just destruction. It's transformation. The Starweaver disintegrated around them, but Marcus wasn't afraid. Whatever was happening, they were facing it together. His last human thought before the quantum cascade claimed them was that maybe, just maybe, their luck hadn't run out after all. They had sacrificed everything to warn Earth, but as their combined consciousness dispersed into the quantum foam, neither of them suspected that their greatest adventure was only beginning. All or nothing. Consciousness returned slowly, like bubbles rising through quantum foam. Marcus opened eyes he no longer had and perceived the world through senses that defied human understanding. His body was gone, transformed into crystalline energy that pulsed with familiar light. Welcome back. Lyra's thoughts merged with his own. The transformation was unexpected. They floated in a realm between dimensions, their combined consciousness anchored to a crystalline form that somehow contained them both. Through their enhanced perception, they could see the quantum strings that held reality together, and the places where those strings were beginning to fray. The veil, Marcus thought, understanding at last. We can see it directly now. Yes, Lyra responded, and we can see them. Through the thinning barrier between dimensions, dark shapes moved with predatory grace. The Void Hunters were gathering, pressing against the weakening points in space-time. But they weren't the only things Marcus and Lyra could perceive. Below them, Earth spun in its orbit, surrounded by a web of quantum energy that hummed with activity. Their warning had been received. The planet's defense forces were mobilizing, but they were preparing for the wrong kind of war. Conventional weapons would be useless against beings that existed partly outside normal space-time. We have to help them, Marcus projected. "We will," Lyra assured him. "The transformation has given us capabilities even the collective never possessed. We are something new." Their shared consciousness reached out, touching the quantum fields that surrounded them. They could feel Kazthor's cultists gathering at key points around the planet, preparing the rituals that would further weaken the veil. More disturbing were the Void Hunter avatars, like the false Commander Valencia, who had already crossed over and taken positions of power. Station Zenith, Marcus realized suddenly. That's where it all connects. Through their quantum-enhanced senses, they could see it clearly now. The space station where they'd first met wasn't just a hub for illegal gambling. Its position in space marked a focal point of quantum instability. Kazthor hadn't built his criminal empire there by chance. The station's quantum signature matches ancient collective technology, Lyra observed. They built it as a veil maintenance facility, but the knowledge of its true purpose was lost in the quantum wars. And now Kazthor's people are using it to do exactly the opposite, Marcus concluded. Can we stop them? Not alone, Lyra admitted, but we're not alone anymore. She directed their shared perception to an approaching quantum signature. Rena's escape pod had been recovered by a research vessel, and the scientist was already coordinating with Earth's defense forces, using the data they'd broadcast to prepare countermeasures. More importantly, their sacrifice had attracted attention from other quarters. Throughout the solar system, ancient quantum sensors were awakening, hidden outposts of crystalline technology, dormant since the quantum wars, were responding to their unique hybrid signature. We're not the last anymore, Lyra realized with joy. There are others, not conscious like we are, but automated systems the collective left behind. We can reactivate them. Then what are we waiting for? Through their shared consciousness, Marcus felt Lyra's equivalent of a smile. They moved through quantum space with impossible speed, their crystalline form trailing light across dimensions. At each hidden outpost, their presence triggered dormant systems, bringing ancient quantum technology back online. A web of crystalline energy began to spread through the solar system, reinforcing the weakening veil. But Kazthor and his allies weren't going to give up easily. As they approached Station Zenith, they encountered resistance. Void Hunter avatars phased partially into normal space, their true forms visible through Marcus and Lyra's enhanced perception. Twisted geometries that hurt the mind to observe. The station's original quantum core is still intact, Lyra reported as they dodged an attack that bent space itself. If we can reactivate it at full power, it would seal the dimensional breaches, Marcus finished. Their shared consciousness made complex calculations instant and intuitive. But we'd need an enormous power source. We are the power source, Lyra pointed out. Our hybrid form generates quantum energy, unlike anything that's existed before. Marcus understood what she was suggesting. It would burn us out completely. Yes, she agreed. One final gamble. All or nothing. Just like the hand that brought us together. They shot through the station's quantum-reinforced hull like a spear of light, their crystalline form shifting to navigate the familiar corridors. The casino level was empty now, evacuated after their warning had exposed Kazthor's true nature. They found the crime lord in the station's core, surrounded by cultists as they performed their ritual to breach the veil. Kazthor's scales shifted to deep crimson when he saw them. The house always wins, he snarled, his true form beginning to show through his physical disguise. Something ancient and hungry that had been playing a very long game. Want to bet? Marcus and Lyra projected together, their crystalline form blazing with combined power. The battle that followed transcended traditional physics. Void Hunters phased fully into reality, their impossible forms clashing with crystalline energy. Marcus's tactical experience merged with Lyra's ancient knowledge as they fought their way to the quantum core. The station shuddered around them as space-time itself buckled under the forces being unleashed. Finally, they reached the core. While their crystalline form held off attacks from all dimensions, they interfaced with the ancient machinery. The station's original purpose began to reassert itself, quantum energy pulsing through systems that had lain dormant for a century. "Ready?" Lyra asked, her consciousness wrapped around Marcus's in a final embrace. "With you? Always." They poured themselves into the quantum core, their hybrid energy catalyzing a reaction that hadn't been seen since the height of the collective's power. The veil between dimensions snapped back into place like a rubber band released from tension. Void hunters were hurled back into their own dimension, their avatars disintegrating. Hasthor's true form was torn apart as the walls between realities reasserted themselves. The quantum shockwave spread through the solar system, activating all the dormant outposts they'd awakened. A new network of Veil maintenance stations hummed to life, stronger than what the collective had originally built thanks to the hybrid technology born from Marcus and Lyra's union. Their consciousness began to fade as their energy drained into the quantum core, but in their final moments of shared awareness, they felt something unexpected: resonance from the quantum foam, the same force that had transformed them in the first place. "Do you feel that?" Lyra asked as their crystalline form began to dissolve. "Like the universe is shuffling the deck," Marcus agreed. Their shared consciousness dispersed into quantum foam once again, but this time it felt less like an ending and more like a new deal about to begin. 6 months later, on a remote Earth facility dedicated to studying crystalline technology, a new form of quantum crystal began to grow. It pulsed with familiar light, its quantum signature unlike anything seen before, except by those who remembered a certain hybrid consciousness that had saved reality itself. The crystal's surface rippled with patterns that might have been laughter. Sometimes the house wins, sometimes the player wins, but the game itself, the game goes on forever. And somewhere in a quantum foam between dimensions, two consciousness that had become one waited to play another hand.